Tonight, Jesus embraces children and even says that if we don't embrace the kingdom of God like a child, we will not enter it. Now, as you can imagine, society was, well, a little different back then, and even the view of children was different. Now, the Greek word for child was tekna, and that encompassed the whole range of someone who was younger than an adult. Now, the developmental stage of how we define childhood really is a modern phenomenon. And it wasn't until the modern era in history that we developed the science of psychology and defined the life developmental stages. So our fascination and appreciation, especially of children, is relatively new and was not part of the culture back in Jesus' time. In fact, Jesus were viewed as the least of these in society. And that's why it was actually shocking to see Jesus embrace children. Now, children were also given the role to obey their parents and also to learn the skill of their parents. Now, you might think that, hey, that's the job of a teenager, but in the Bible, there was no word for teenager. There was simply child and adult and nothing in between. It wasn't until the early 1900s that psychologists defined the term adolescence, and even back then, it was the ages between 14 and 16. Since then, adolescence, of course, has expanded from, say, 11 to even the mid-20s. And speaking of that, by 14 or 16 in Jesus' day, you were considered to be a grown adult. And so when the disciples paid the temple tax, which is for ages 20 and older, only Jesus and Peter paid the temple tax, which means that all of the disciples were under the age of 20, except for Peter. Isn't that crazy? So what did Jesus mean that we need to receive the kingdom of God like a child? Well, from this we can gather that the kingdom of God is offered to everyone, including the least of these. But I'm sure it also has to do with obedience, since that was the child's job back then. Or at the very least, children even today have this ability to trust their parents and rely on them, unlike adults who become more dependent. So maybe it's this trust that Jesus is talking about. So there you go, a little bit about children, and that's enough today for our historical minute.